긴 하는데 영화 내용을 모르는 사람들한테 대충 해줘야 된다면 이 얘기는 초등학교 친구들에 대한 얘기인데 여자랑 남자예요. 여자는 어떤 여자아이 살고 있는 동네에 그 남자아이 가족이 이사해요. 근데 여자아이는 처음부터 되게 좋아하는데 남자아이는 이 여자아이 되게 약간 짜증나 있어요. 되게 약간 불편하고 뭔가 별로 안 좋아하고 막 말이 너무 많고 막 그렇게 생각하는데 같은 상황인데 여자아이의 약간 시선 한번 얘기해주고 그 다음에 다음 챕터는 같은 상황인데 남자의 시선으로 얘기를 해요. 근데 영화 진짜 재밌어요. 저 정말 좋아요. 그래서 제 노트북에 I have a scene from Flipped on my book. It's where she 아마 로맨스일걸요? 읽어볼게요. 이렇게 Chet appeared about 10 minutes earlier. He laughed. You've got an enviable amount of energy today, don't you? No, I said, brushing back some of my hair with the back of my hand. I'm just mad. He produced his own brush and an empty coffee can. Oh, who at? Myself. Oh, that's a tough one. Did you do poorly on a test? No, I turned to him and said, how did you fall in love with your wife? He poured some Navajo white into his can and smiled. He said, boy problems. I do not have boy problems. He hesitated but didn't argue. Instead, he said, I fell in love with her by mistake. By mistake? What do you mean? I didn't intend to. At the time, I was engaged to somebody else and in no position to fall in love. Fortunately for me, I saw how blind I'd been before it was too late. Blind? Yes. My fiancée was very beautiful. She had the most magnificent brown eyes and skin like an angel, and for a time all I could see was her beauty. But then, well, let's just say I discovered she wasn't a fraction of the person Renee was. He dipped his brush into the coffee can and stroked a picket of paint. It's easy to look back and see it, and it's easy to give the advice, but the sad fact is most people don't look beneath the surface until it's too late. We were quiet for a minute, but I could see Chet thinking, and from the furrow in his brow, I knew it had nothing to do with my problems. I'm sorry I brought up your wife, I said. Oh, don't be, that's all right. He shook his head, tried on a smile. Besides, I wasn't thinking of Renee. I was thinking of someone else. Someone who's never been able to look beneath the surface. At this point, I don't suppose I even want her to. Who was he talking about? I wanted to know, but I felt it would be crossing some line to ask, so we painted pickets in silence. At last, he turned to me and said, get beyond his eyes and his smile and the sheen of his hair and look at what's really there. Oof. The way he said it sent a chill through me. Ooh. It was as though he knew, and suddenly I felt defensive. Was he telling me his grandson wasn't worth it? When it was time to go in for dinner, I still didn't feel right, but at least the tornado was gone. Mum said Dad was working late, and since the boys were off with their friends, it was just the two of us. She told me that she and Dad had talked about it, and that they both felt a little strange, having Chet come over like he was. Maybe she said they would find a way to pay him for his help. I told her I thought Chet would find that insulting, but the next day she went ahead and insulted him anyway. Chet said, no, Mrs. Baker, it's been my pleasure to help out your daughter on this project, and wouldn't hear another word about it. The week ended with my dad loading the back of his truck with all the clippings and scraps before he set off for work on Saturday morning. Then Chet and I spent the rest of the day hoeing up weeds and raking and raiding the dirt for seeding. It was on his last day that Chet asked, your family's not moving, are you? Moving? Why do you say that? Oh, my daughter brought up the possibility at the dinner table last night. She thought that maybe you're fixing up the house because you're getting ready to sell it. Even though Chet and I had talked about a lot of things while we were working, I probably wouldn't have told him about Mr. Finnegan or Uncle David or why the yard was a mess if he hadn't asked me about moving. But since he had, well, I wound up telling him everything, and it felt good to talk about it, especially about Uncle David. It felt like blowing a dandelion into the wind and watching all the little seeds float off, up and away. I was proud of my parents, and looking around the front yard, I was proud of me too. Just wait until I got my hands in the backyard. Then maybe I'd even paint the house. I could do it. I could. Chet was pretty quiet after I told him the story. And when Mum brought us out sandwiches at lunchtime, we sat on the porch and ate without saying a word. Then he broke the silence by nodding across the street and saying, I don't know why he doesn't just come out and say hello. Who? I asked, then looked across the street to where he nodded. The curtain in Bryce's room moved quickly back into place and I couldn't help asking, Bryce? That's the third time I've seen him watching. Really? My heart was fluttering like a baby bird trying to fly. He frowned. He frowned and said, let's finish up and get that seed sown, shall we? You'll want the warmth of the day to help with the germination. I was happy to finally be planting the yard, but I couldn't help being distracted by Bryce's window. Was he watching? During the rest of the afternoon, I checked more often than I'd like to admit. I'm afraid Chet noticed too, because when we were all done, we'd congratulated on each other on what was sure to be a fine-looking yard. He said, he may be acting like a coward now, but I do hold out hope for the boy. A coward? What on earth could I say to that? I just stood there with the hose in my one hand and the spigot valve beneath the other. And with that, Chet waved so long and walked across the street. A few minutes later, I saw Bryce coming down the sidewalk toward his house. I did a double take. All this time, I thought he was inside the house watching, and he was really outside walking. I was embarrassed all over again. I turned my back on him and concentrated on watering the yard. What a fool I was! What a complete idiot! I had just built up a nice head of angry steam when I heard, it's looking good, Julie. Nice job. It was Bryce, standing right there on our driveway, and suddenly I wasn't mad at me anymore. I was mad at him. How could he stand there like my supervisor and tell me, nice job? He had no business saying anything after what he'd done. I was about to hose him down when he said, I'm sorry for what I did, Julie. It was, wrong. Yo! I looked at him into those brilliant blue eyes. And I tried to do what Chet had said. I tried to look past them. What was behind them? What was he thinking? Was he really sorry? Or was he just feeling bad about the things he'd said? It was like looking into the sun, and I had to turn away. I couldn't tell you what we talked about after that, except that he was nice to me and he made me laugh. After he left, I shut off the water and went inside feeling very, very strange. The rest of the evening, I bounced back and forth between upset and uneasy. The worst part being, I couldn't really put my finger on what exactly I was upset or uneasy about. Of course, it was Bryce. But wasn't I just mad? He'd just been a scoundrel. Or happy? Why wasn't I just happy? He'd come over to our house. He'd stood on our driveway. He'd said nice things. We'd laughed. But I wasn't happy or mad. I wasn't mad or happy. And as I lay in bed trying to read, I realized that upset had been overshadowed by uneasy. I felt as though someone was watching me. I got so spooked I even got up and checked out the window and in the closet and under the bed. But still the feeling didn't go away. It took me until nearly midnight to understand what it was. It was me watching me. 근데 그거 방금 여자의 시선이었고 이제 같은 상황인데 남자 시선으로 바꿔요. 알아들었어요? 최대한 약간 미미미미미. 이따 묻자. 아니야. 근데 제가 워낙 영어로 좀 빨리 말한 편이기도 해서 이해하긴 되게 어려워.